Good afternoon and welcome to Evolutions for the Record. I'm your host Tessa Humphreys, and today my guest is Malcolm Trevena of the Coquitlam-based nonprofit organization Meaningful Volunteer. The organization is launching a new fair trade fashion label called Pamba in the spring of 2011 to help women in Africa. Thanks for joining me today, Malcolm.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
And so, just to get started, what exactly is Meaningful Volunteer?
Well, Meaningful Volunteer is a non-profit volunteer placement organization. What we basically do is take volunteers from all over the world and put them in developing communities to empower the locals there. And currently we're based in the Philippines and Uganda.
And how long has the organization been running?
We were established in 2008, so coming up to about 3 years now.
Okay, and so, what exactly is the Pamba line that's coming out this spring?
Well, Pamba is a fair trade fashion label. What we'll be doing is we'll be going to Uganda and taking in a lot of pedal-powered sewing machines because there's no power in that village, empowering the local women to design their own fashion and make their own fashion, and then we'll be selling it online and in fashion boutiques around the world. And we've been planning to have a fashion show in the local parade with a catwalk and music and all that sort of stuff.
And what kind of clothes are we seeing? Is it traditional to their culture, or?
Well, we're trying to do a fusion between the African styles and the styles that we're used to here in the Western world, because some of the traditional African clothing is suited for Africa, but it's not really what people would want to wear in their own country. So kind of a fusion between the African fashion and our traditional Western fashion.
And how does teaching the women to sew, how does that help them?
Well, we're going to a very small, impoverished village, and it's very hard to be a Ugandan man, but it's even harder to be an African woman. So what we're doing, we're trying to empower them and build them up and give them some type of income to make decisions with. Things like feeding their children, sending their children, that type of stuff. Because the cure to poverty, I think, is the empowerment of women. So that's what we're trying to do with this project.
And what has the reaction been like from them so far?
Well, we haven't actually approached them yet. We've actually started 2 other fair trade fashion labels in Uganda already, or one in Uganda, one in the Philippines. So we're very much in the planning stage. So we haven't actually approached the ladies yet, but that will come soon.
How have the 2 other ones, how have they been doing?
We have one in Uganda called Grassroots Uganda that has about 100 ladies in it. Last year we raised about $50,000 US dollars for those ladies, which was great. And that's taking poster paper and turning it into paper beads, which we then convert into jewelry. And that's been very successful. Like one lady, for example, recently bought a house with the money she made from Grassroots Uganda. So we have another one in the Philippines that's a very similar one. We take paper beads and make it into jewelry, and we sell that around the world.
And you just said one woman bought a house. What else do they use the money for?
Well, we ask every lady, if you could have one wish in the world, what would it be? And they almost say without fail, an education for their child. So most of them use it for education for their children, and some of them spend it on, I said one of the ladies bought a house with her money. So we really say, whatever you want to spend the money on, you can spend it. It's your money, it's not ours.
And what is that like for you? I guess first of all, what is it like to see them doing the work and being able to help them in that situation?
Well, we are a non-profit, so we're not making money, but it does make us feel good about ourselves, I guess, so that's great. Like just recently I visited a lady who bought her own house, and yeah, that felt good.
And you were saying they, without a doubt, they always say they want an education for their child. What do you think about that thought process in itself? They're not even looking out for themselves, they're looking out for their family. That comes first.
Yeah, well, goes back to what I said before. When you empower the woman, it's a real cure to poverty. And part of empowerment, when you empower a woman, you empower the people around her, which includes her child. If a child can go to school, instead of having to do the usual things like collecting firewood, collecting water, all those other time-consuming tasks, they can go to school and learn to read and write, and that's one stage in bringing these people out of extreme poverty.
And just to get a little idea, what is it really like down there? I talk about the grassroots Uganda. What is it like for these women down there?
Well, it kind of goes from bad to worse. Like a lot of the people who work for Grassroots Uganda, probably about 75% of the women come from the very extreme north of Uganda, which is a terrible state at the moment. There's been a civil war there for about 24 years now. I think it's slowly starting to peter out. But many of those ladies have been kidnapped by the rebel group up there and forced into sexual slavery, which is a hard sentence to make just there, but it is pretty tough. And many of their children have been kidnapped and forced to become child soldiers, for example. The ladies we're trying to help with this Pamba, their situation isn't quite as dire, but the village where we're based in, called Boyaya, has no power, for example, no clean water. And we did a census in the village, and about 50% of all deaths are from malaria. Practically no child under the age of 9 can read a single letter. And we haven't done HIV tests yet, but if it's anywhere else like other villages we've been based in, it'll be about 40% would be HIV positive. So
Okay.
the situation is pretty dire, but we're trying our best.
And how did you first get started with all of this?
Well, I volunteered myself in both the Philippines and Uganda, and Ghana as well, and these were not very meaningful experiences. Like I taught in the Philippines, for example, but all I did was replace an existing Filipino teacher. So that wasn't very helpful. And I went to Uganda, for example, and worked with an NGO, which is a non-government organization, and they promised the world but delivered little, so that was very frustrating. And I worked on a refugee camp in Ghana, and the organization I was working with was very corrupt. And the only good thing I did was shout at the head of the organization for about an hour, but other than that, nothing meaningful was accomplished. So with our organization, Meaningful Volunteer, we try and ensure that we have meaningful experiences and are not just, for example, propping up corrupt NGOs.
Is that something that's quite common down there, the corruption within these organizations?
Well, once you've lived in Africa for a while, you get a bit cynical about these things. I just assume that any NGO I deal with is corrupt.
Okay.
So the cynicism kind of gets driven into you.
Okay. And this idea of the fair trade fashion label, is this something that has been done before, or how did you come about this idea in terms of helping the women?
Well, when we show people our paper bead products from Uganda, they're all very interested in them. But when you go to Uganda, it's kind of like every other organization is doing paper beads. So it's kind of done to death in Uganda. So we're looking for something fresh and new, and we thought a fair trade fashion label would be good. If nothing else, because since there's no power in the village, we needed a nice low-tech thing, and the pedal-powered sewing machines are a perfect fit for that. And everybody likes clothes. We all have to buy clothes, so hoping to tap into that market for the ladies.
And what has the success been like for Grassroots Uganda?
Well, as I said, we have about 100 ladies there, and last year we had about $50,000. So it has been very successful in that we've got some money to the ladies. But on the flip side, sometimes these projects cause jealousy in the villages, for example, for people who aren't involved in the project.
Okay.
And we've had examples, for example, like people's livestock being poisoned just purely out of jealousy. So sometimes it gets a bit frustrating because you're trying to do good, and it's like, all these other things come up as well. You empower the ladies with the money, but then their goats and chickens and so on get poisoned. So it's a little frustrating sometimes.
Is there anything you can do in that situation, or is that just kind of the way it goes?
Well, it's kind of the way it goes. It's the village politics, obviously, and we don't really know the village politics, and these types of things just happen. So it's frustrating sometimes. So it's sometimes very hard to do good, but we do our best.
And for Grassroots Uganda, you said you had the $50,000. Is that kind of like an international span, or where are you getting most of your sales? Is it Canada, or how does that all work?
Well, we have a website, grassrootsuganda.com. But really, most of our sales are driven from volunteers who come to Uganda, see the projects that we do, and think, wow, this is fantastic, and take a box and take it back home and sell it.
Okay.
But we have organised our own fair trade events, like we have one coming up on December 9th at a place in Vancouver called My Best Friend's Closet. So we're launching the Grassroots Uganda in there and selling it and using that as a retail outlet. So we have lots of fair trade events like that around the world.
Okay. And, I mean, social media is huge these days. How has social media helped you guys out and you guys launch these projects?
Well, social media is a fantastic tool that allows us to reach lots and lots of people. So we do things like Twitter has been very useful for us. We post lots of videos up on YouTube. Like, for example, with Pamba, we plan to do a whole series of videos in the lead up to when we arrive in the country. We've got our first 2 videos out, which are explaining the project, and the second one is about our fundraiser. And very soon we'll do a video showing the designs that we've come up with, and another video explaining, like, when you buy a $20 t-shirt, how much goes to the ladies, how much goes to materials, and so on. And we do that via YouTube, so bringing it up. And we also have things like, Facebook fan pages and all that type of stuff, and of course our website as well. So, social media, very, very useful.
Is this something you use for Grassroots Uganda as well, or is this kind of something new?
We've really only started doing it in the last 6 months or so. Like, we had a website, grassrootsuganda.com, and just a video with that. So we're really just kicking into the social media in the last 6 months or so.
Okay. Now, I was reading that you guys already have quite a bit of interest so far in the Mamba Pamba line. What kind of interest do you have?
Well, we have a lot of the interest we've gotten so far is people wanting to come and help us out with the project. Like, I myself am a bit of a systems guy, like organising processes and stuff, but I'm not at all fashionable. So we're looking for fashion designers, human resource managers, videographers, photographers, all those types of stuff. So I think people really like the idea of getting involved in a product like Mamba Pamba right at the grassroots level. Like, we're starting out Go, so they're very interested in that process.
One thing I probably should have asked earlier, but I just came to my mind. Is this just for women only, or is this going to be kind of like a men, women, children line, or how is that all working out?
Well, we'll only have women making the products, but we'll do all those lines, like children, women, men. Like when we do our fashion show, for example, we're going to have all shapes, sizes, and ages on our run walk.
Okay.
So we're not obviously, buying into the ultra-thin female model idea. So big ladies, small ladies, big men, small men, all that type of stuff.
And when is that fashion show taking place?
Probably, I suspect, about October next year.
Okay.
There's lots of planning and training and all that type of stuff to do.
Right. What are you looking forward to most when you head down to Africa to talk about Mamba Pamba and get this project going?
Well, I love living in Africa, despite all its problems, and the whole process of empowering, probably an HIV-positive woman, taking care of 9 children, and giving her the chance to make some options. Because that's another thing that drives people out of poverty, is when you have disposable income, you have choices with your money. It doesn't go into food and water and those essentials of life. And that kind of starts people up on the road to economic freedom. So just that whole process is very satisfying.
And, I mean, how do you approach it when you go down there? How do you approach explaining the idea and all of that?
To the locals? Well, the locals know me down there. We have projects running there. But you have to be very careful about how you manage this as well. Like, you can't just go in and say, we have this cool project, come and do it. You almost need to market to the locals as well. Explain to them why this is a good idea. Explain to them about disposable income. And then go through the process of choosing which ladies, because I suspect every lady wants to do it, but we just don't have the current demand to satisfy all those women. So we've got to go through that process.
Okay. And when is the expected launch?
I suspect we'll be selling stuff online probably October, November next year.
Okay, and is that on Grassroots Uganda as well, or is there another website?
We have the mambapamba.org website.
Okay.
Things can go directly through there.
Okay, well that's all the time we have today for Evolutions for the Record. I'd like to thank my guest Malcolm Trevena of the Coquitlam-based nonprofit organization Meaningful Volunteer for joining me today. I'm Tessa Humphreys and you're listening to Evolution 107.9.